Well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday. It's Tuesday down here in Southeast Texas. And let me warn you about something. It's going to be a hot Tuesday. I was watching the weather forecast last night, and, temperature wise, it's not going to be that impressive. But heat index wise, it's going to be dangerous. I don't know, 150, 160 degree heat index. Not really that much, not that much, but it's going to feel like that. Um, that's it's summertime. We're getting ready for everything that we need to endure this summer, including coronavirus and a bunch of other mess. But hey, I got to bring to you a question before we get into our scripture this morning. How many mistakes has God ever made? How many mistakes has God ever made? That's a little bit of a trick question, but it's a question we need to, I don't know, at least be cognizant of as we listen to Moses talking with God at the burning bush. Randy, I hope things are well for you over there in Houston, man. Y'all take some of that humidity back to Houston, or at least at least don't let it get any higher than what it is. Good to see you this morning, and Faye, God bless you this morning. Good to see you. Give Jerry a big fist bump from me. Taya, how's my sister in Russia? Good to see you. Good afternoon to you in Russia, and a big fist bump to you. Glad we're catching up this morning. Carlene, good to see you, and give Alton a big fist bump from me. Carlene, I tell you what, y'all had the best looking section in church Sunday morning. A lot of good looking folks sitting in y'all's vicinity. So glad that y'all got to come and participate. And what a joyous service we had this past Sunday. Esther, good to see you. Big fist bump. Give Ron a big fist bump from me. And Mickey, hey, how are things in Florida? Hope you're doing all right, sister. God bless you this morning. Good to be with you. Jeff, how's my intrepid brother? It's good to see you in here, Jeff. God bless you today. And Eugene and Patsy, hey, good to see y'all in here. Hope y'all are doing well and staying safe. I've got to enjoy just a little bit of coffee before I proceed. Of course, this is it's not the official First Baptist Nederland coffee delivery device. It's the Bulldog Power coffee delivery device. But you know what kind of coffee it's got this morning. It's got good old Seaport coffee. So that's what we're going with. I think that'll work. I think that'll work. Don, hey, Don Duncan, good to see you this morning. Good to be catching up with you, brother. Hope things are going well for you. Kathy, hey, good. Perry, Ohio. Hey, I hope it's nice and beautiful up north in Perry, Ohio. And could y'all send us some cool, dry air? I mean, we could really use some cool, dry air down here. Aunt Brenda, God bless you this morning. Good to see you in on here. Hope everything is good in Paris, Texas. Sure appreciate y'all's prayers for us down here in Nederland, and we can remember y'all up there and are praying down here. Steve, good morning. Happy Tuesday back at you, brother. Got brother Wade on here. So hey, I think the room is complete. So we're gonna have a little study continuing on in God's conversation with Moses and Moses' response to God. Now, I've made an observation that this during this whole conversation, anytime God speaks, man, things are going good. But when Moses interjects, he doesn't ever interrupt. But when he responds, that's when things go poorly. That might be some of our problems spiritually, is that when God speaks, we're not quick to obey. Moses was quick to question, quick to maybe try to reroute God's plan. And I asked at the beginning of this, how many mistakes has God ever made? And Taya, you were always the math whiz. Taya says zero, and I'm going to have to learn how to say zero in Russian just because of that. Learn how to say zero in Russian so we can continue this conversation. Sarah Fontenot, hey, do me a favor, give Clint a big fist bump from me real quick. The premise here is that God doesn't make mistakes. even though we can't understand his plan, doesn't mean that there's any fault in his plan. There just might be elements of it that we might not be initially comfortable with. Moses was called by God to go back to Egypt to do something he'd never done before, to be a leader of a great people, to speak to the most powerful person in the whole region, which would be Pharaoh, and to command him to let the Israelites go so they could go worship God. These are things that Moses didn't feel personally equipped for, but things that he was spiritually called to. I think we all find things in our lives where we feel spiritually called, but also humanly inadequate. And it causes us to question ourselves and question God. God, have you made a mistake in this? Have you made a mistake that in calling me or in using me or in wanting me to be about your business, you might have picked the wrong person? Well, that's exactly what Moses asked of God in Exodus 4. Let me start reading verse 10. And we've just been continuing on through this conversation on the mountain of God that Moses has had with God at the burning bush. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." Moses is basically saying a couple things. God, I don't know how to use words really well. So, Lord, you're going to have to forgive me because I don't know how to go and be persuasive with my words. Also says that when he says slow of speech and tongue, maybe he had a stutter or a stammer. Maybe he was afraid of public speaking. You can add any one of those to the list. He was bringing up excuse after excuse for why he shouldn't be the one that God used to deliver his people, God's people, from within Egypt and out into the promised land. It says, I've never been eloquent in the past, every day up till this point, and nor am I eloquent now. He says, since you have spoken to your servant. He says, Lord, I really, for the past, 80 years, I've not really felt eloquent. And even after you've had your talk with me today, I don't feel eloquent now. Transformation is something that happens in God's timing. Moses was expecting maybe, well, if this really is a God thing, it'll just come over me instantaneously. That's not what God had planned. In fact, God had something much better planned. Moses says, I can't speak eloquently, haven't spoken eloquently in the past. I don't feel eloquent now. Maybe you got the wrong person, Lord. And listen to how the Lord answers him. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. Wow, isn't that powerful? I mean, that's what our trust is. That's what our confidence is that when let's say we open up scripture and it lands on a passage that talks about evangelism or ministry or things that we know, irregardless of our occupation or our geography or our station in life, we need to be about these foundational things that apply to every single one of us. When we read these things and are convicted that they do apply to us, we might start to make excuses. And we might think, well, maybe this word from God applies to other people, but not me. But no, God didn't make a mistake. God sent his word to us that we might believe it, and by believing it, obey it. And he gives us his presence to accompany us. I've said this maybe every time we've been on here together. God is with us. God is with us in a very real way. He makes us able to complete the plan that he has for us. God says, listen, Moses, I gave you your mouth. I gave you your tongue. I give you sight. It's that's my realm, Moses. And if your mouth isn't working right, I'm gonna form it to work right. I'm gonna make it work right. If you don't have the words in your head to be able to come out of your mouth, I'm gonna put them in your heart so that they can bubble up and be used when it's time to speak. I'm gonna teach you. That teaching effort, it isn't accomplished in a moment. It's accomplished over a lifetime. It's accomplished in the obedience that we give to God, that time and faithfulness that we give ourselves to being molded and made and transformed by God. Excuse me. I'll get to the last little bit of this after a warm sip of coffee. But since this is Moses' first real experience with God, we we have to understand Moses is going to be nervous. Moses is going to be a little bit leery. Moses has been given this great vision of becoming a leader that will lead God's people into the promised land, or at least out of Egypt, out of bondage. And Moses hadn't bought into it yet. So Moses puts up one last protest, okay? He puts up one last barrier between obedience and disobedience. In verse 13, it says, "But Moses said, 'Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else.'" I mean, yeah, wouldn't it just have saved a lot of time if Moses had said this in the first place? God could have got to the ultimate argument. He could have got to that, command. Moses becomes a little bit more of a conscript after this than anything else. He's not really into it yet, but God is pleased to use Moses in spite of his hesitations and reservations. God's going to help him overcome his failings, his faults, his past sins, his past life, and anything that would hinder him in his progress in being used by God. It says in verse 14, "Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, 'What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth, and I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so that you can perform the signs with it.'" Now, God's already thought of everything. I mean, there's not anything that Moses can say that God hasn't already thought of. There's no point that Moses can catch the Lord and the Lord say, I really didn't see it that way. I didn't think about that. No, the Lord has seen it from every angle, and he's already provided for every contingency. He's just needing Moses to show a little bit of faithfulness. And so in order to extract that faithfulness from Moses, God puts things in place, orchestrates history so that Moses would have the opportunity to be faithful. After the Lord's anger raged, the Lord said, "Listen, your brother Aaron, he's already on the way. He's already on the way, and I know he can speak well." We're not ever called into Lone Ranger ministries. I can't think that I've ever done anything as a Christian as far as ministry or missions or any program that was solely individualistic. There are always partners for the ministry, partners for the journey. And Moses needed a partner. Maybe he was afraid because it was just him and God. But God even provided for that. And God said, "Hey, what about Aaron? I know he can speak well. You team up with Aaron, and y'all will be an indomitable force. You'll be able to teach him what I tell you, and y'all will lead the people together." Man, this is just wonderful. Now, what we're going to see actually is that after Moses and Aaron meet up, unite, and go to Pharaoh, Aaron's going to play a very small part in all the proceedings. Moses plays the lion's share, or has the lion's share of the action. And I think this is really interesting because he grows into that role for which God made him. You might not be, You might not be equipped at the present moment. You might not be trained for whatever ministry it is that God has in mind for you. But that doesn't mean that God's through or that God can't use you. It might mean that God is growing you into that role. God doesn't make mistakes. When he calls us, he's got a plan for us. And if we'll just be faithful to submit to him in faithfulness and in obedience, without hesitation, without too much questioning. It's all right to question, but don't be obstinate. Don't get to the point where you cut God off, as Moses did at the end by saying, "Please send someone else." Let's at least be willing to go along for the journey, and that's what God's looking for. And he reminds Moses, "Keep your staff in your hand so you can perform the signs." It was through that staff, that shepherd's tool, that God performed some great signs for Moses, and God is going to use that same staff to do signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Let's continue to watch today for the signs and wonders that God is looking to do around us here on Tuesday. Was it June the 30th, the last day of June 2020? I think God still has good in store for us. Let's be sure to look for it and be sure that when we find it and experience it, we thank him for it, because he never makes mistakes. Hey, y'all have a great rest of your Tuesday. If you get any prayer requests, send them along to me. Just email them, text message, Facebook message. I look forward to adding those to our prayer list for tomorrow night. But y'all stay moderately cool today, which might mean staying inside in the air conditioner. But God bless y'all, and see y'all very soon.